After doing some research on polyandry, which is one woman with multiple husbands, I have concluded two things about this marital system. One, it is very spiritual. And two, it is about preserving bloodlines. My name is Asha Sekhmet, and I am a wife, Tantra practitioner, thought leader, oracle, and founder of the Maji Community. We practice an indigenous life system, spirituality, tribalism, and sovereignty. In this video, I'm going to share some of my takeaways from conducting research on polyandry in the different places that they practice it, like China, Africa, India, and parts of the Americas as well, and talking personally with people who work with tribes who practice polyandry. So, in all that I took away from it, I was able to derive how spiritual polyandry is. And these typically are leaders in the community, women who are tasked to take on this role. And even when we look at it from the 18th dynasty China, they used polyandry or wife sharing as a means to overcome economic poverty. So that's very spiritual too. So sometimes, they may derive, of course, for different reasons as to why they see a need to practice this in their tribe or community. But these are some of the common things that I was able to observe. And even just talking with people personally who work with tribes in America that practice polyandry. Now, polyandry, right, is that, right, when we talk about a wife with multiple husbands, and then polyamory is multiple intimate relationships. So these can be more seasonal relationships, these can be business partnerships, these can be co-parenting dynamics, and all towards working towards community. Now, what my task was from spirit, right, in my life's purpose is to study the various forms of poly that will contribute towards sovereign community. So really my task was to go through a 7-year initiation to learn an indigenous way of life and then take that and build sovereign community out of it. And then with building sovereign community, though, I had to study various forms of indigenous family practices and relationship styles. So that includes all the different forms of poly. And then for us in the Mahi community, of course, we work through the opposite sex. So that's the element that we put into it. But nonetheless, I did have to study and be aware of all the different types and forms of ways that human tribal relationships can come together. These are poly relationships to build community. So in studying polyandry specifically, I had to first, because it's more heavily spiritual, I would say, than even the concept of polygyny. So polygyny is one man with multiple wives, which that's going to be more common, right? Because ratio difference and more women, that makes sense. So when I originally received my education, and most of my poly journey has been in husband sharing or what you consider polygyny. Now, what ended up happening was I was like, okay, each level is like a new chamber of my initiations as well. So I was like, okay, now I'm building more community out that me and my husband practice polyamory. And when I was practicing polygyny, that was the level of community building that I need to get to. But I didn't realize that that wasn't the full picture of what a community is. And especially like for me, if I'm tasked to take on certain leaderships of these relationship and family styles. So for me, it was pretty eye-opening because I originally came in with a perspective of, okay, sisterhood. I understand that piece and I have to learn to share and operate, in community with my sisters and uplifting our husband, right? The Black man. And it was a portion where I really had to think about, you know, like, well, what would it look like for a woman to practice polyandry, right? And not from an egotistical place, right? So I was looking at videos, right? And you'll see videos out there, particularly for the Black Americans experience. You'll see videos of some women talk about discouraging polyandry, and they're encouraging polygyny. But what I found a common denominator with the women who would be doing these videos that, these Black polygamy pages like to promote is that they typically fit a demographic of single motherhood. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, right? Like if their purpose or their lifetime, they would, be single mothers and they're living in the American, the system as a Black person, and they're saying this is what we should do, share. If we had a child by a man, we should just share him. So they came to those realizations in that journey. But what I started to think about is, okay, if I don't fit into that demographic itself, right? I'm not a single mother. I don't have children, but I have always been a wife. I was married off when I was 19 years old, and I received formal trainings on wifehood, and I actually just carry it. I wasn't fully aware of those are gifts as well. And I ended my first marriage without having children, but my last husband did have children. He went on and had children by a woman and then getting remarried with another woman, and practicing monogamy. So for me, I looked at it as if my soul was protected, because we were together for 7 years, and I never had children by him. But I ultimately thought about how we separated the marriage as well. As I'm doing this research and I'm studying, I'm thinking about it because I'm trying to conceptualize a woman who would be tasked to have multiple husbands, because from my background in being trained in wifehood, I know the depth of work that is. So I'm trying to conceptualize that, because I'm like, that's a lot of work, right? People, say if you're having sexual relationships with multiple men, or it's not fully invested in the community, then that's not really polyandry. Those probably are forms of polyamory, which is fine if that's someone's path. But I'm like, okay, polyandry is a little bit more serious. So I wanted to start to understand this type of marital system from a perspective of like a woman who would actually do that in a righteous way when we're talking about community building. And one of the things that I did come across too was that the misconception around polyandry is that the men or the husbands do not have other wives. And that's this is what I mean about that. You wouldn't get in a community like that. Even if someone just practiced just polygyny and it's just him and his wives in a huddle, that's not a community. Those are marital systems. So for me, as an oracle that was tasked to study the different types and given the instructions on how you would actually carry out a community with poly relationships, these are some of the things that's been channeling to me, because a community is sovereign. Communities are interpersonal, interdependent social constructs. So that means that the humans are very interdependent on each other. So when I think about a woman being called to do polyandry, I'm like, okay, I started to just look at my own life, because I wanted to understand, okay, because I understand I'm not normal, right? I understand I'm not normal. I'm not fully human. So I was like, okay, it would make sense for like maybe a woman like that, who maybe have a special path, right? And then understanding the seriousness of, in our community, for the Maji community, that people are not being egotistical with what's going on. Like, for instance, just because, one woman is doing that, it's not necessarily influencing other sisters in the community that's not their life path. And I didn't really have any issues with that when I started to talk with sisters in our community about the concept of, polyamory, polyandry, and wife sharing. We would have these conversations, and in the Maji community, the sisters are conscious. So they know their life paths. They know that for the ones who are just with their husbands that are tapped in with our community, they are aware and know that. And to me, that's how you can even achieve a sovereign community, a community period, because communities are sovereign, is that the human beings in these communities have tapped into their own inner sovereignty. So back to how this brought me full circle to me understanding a woman who would be called to do polyandry, because that's a leadership role, and it's a lot more in depth because it's very spiritual. And we talk about preserving bloodlines. I was like, wow, I'm putting myself in a woman's shoes like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, if I'm not fully human, then if I was to birth something into this world, it wouldn't be in the matrix. It would be alien, right? I know that. So, seeing that my path was not normal really helped me start to understand more about a life path of a woman who would be called to do polyandry. And I didn't realize that, when I look at the sequence of my whole life, my 20s have been very challenging. My 20s have been very spiritually intense, very difficult. And getting out of my first marriage was almost the hardest thing I had to do. But the silver lining in it was that, we went down different paths. Again, he ended that marriage with children and going back to monogamy, and following his path, he kind of went back into the matrix. And then for me, I just continue on growing higher levels of understanding community. That's what even got me from polygyny to polyamory. And now I'm just studying polyandry as well. But it's all of it is encompassing to community building. And that's why when you look at things on social media, this is a spiritual principle. Never trust the apparent. Just because something that you're seeing with these two eyes, that doesn't mean that's all there is. There's another eye. There's the third eye. And so for me, I had to understand deeper, in depth, the various forms of poly relationships, because when you go and observe, let's say, a village that has been practicing these type of relationship styles for generations, there could be various forms of poly there that you're not fully aware of because you're not a part of the community. So I just really needed to in depth understand, and then putting myself in a woman's shoes who practice polyandry from a righteous place, and with tasked with building actual community, right? And one of the gaps that I have seen with some women in the West of saying that they desire this or that they practice it is that they are skipping spiritual schools. Like, they have not even learned how to practice sharing a man, let alone trying to do something like that. So again, poly is not about uh, individual desire, right? A woman saying that she wants to do that because the man does that, that's juvenile level. And you're going to have perpetual conflict in a community with people who are continuously ego driven. You're not going to ever get a harmonious, successful poly relationships that build towards community. That's why with the Mahi community, this is what separates us and makes us different from other people, because all the words that I am saying, they're just words in terms of there's something deeper and stronger that's backing me up. And that's the spiritual life system that we have. And the only way that you could tap into that is to, one, chosen, right, on both sides, because we want to make sure it's a good fit. But two, we still offer education to everyone, even if you belong to different communities and tribes, because my ultimate goal, right, the goal of the Most High, I know this, that get channeled to me, is we're preparing for the new earth. We want to raise the collective consciousness. So our education is free for all, right? That's why we're on the internet, right? This is free education. And then in terms of these videos, but in terms of like our actual like initiations and understanding, going through the real trainings, because this is just surface level, right? This is just to bring to your awareness. You have to go through real education, and those are where we have our events and the ebooks, our library of courses. That's on school. So that's the Maji Community Mystery School. If you want to start learning and start getting educated on the righteous way to do poly relationships, then you can join our school community. It is free to join. And that's where, we build community together, and you can connect with other truth seekers and other people who are working towards sovereignty by developing consciousness. Okay, so that's what sets us apart from, I would say, other groups, is we practice that, that high level of poly relationships that's ma'atic. So yeah, ma'atic meaning, justice, truth, harmony, balance, right? Balance. So yeah, those are my final thoughts about polyandry. I think that ultimately a woman does have to be chosen for that. I do. And just putting myself in a woman's shoes like that, it makes sense, because for me, as a woman born in America, as a Black woman born in America, I never fitted into any particular category of Black women. Like I just didn't live a normal path. I wasn't a single mother. I hardly ever been single. I've always been a wife, and I've always been dedicated to family, community, and culture, and resurrecting what was mine and that was taken and stolen from me. So that's been the life path. And so it's a beautiful thing. And the deeper I get into my work, the more of an appreciation I have for honoring the Most High's laws of community, and operating in this realm, because it is about that too, about us evolving and mastering our lessons. So yeah, so let me know your thoughts in the comments, any questions you have, and just kind of chiming in on the conversation. And I appreciate you all being here on my channel, and welcome to the online tribe here. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all in the next video. And if you are looking for any bookings with me, one-on-ones, if you're having questions about poly relationships, you need to book a consultation. Okay, I'm not doing any conversations with a lot of questions that people have. Just come schedule a consultation with me. If you're looking for indigenous wifehood trainings, if you're looking for, as a man, you're looking to develop and go through your trainings to be able to maintain this as a husband leader in this poly dynamic, tap in with me, schedule a one-on-one with me, ashasekhmet.com. And you can also look at my courses on there as well. Start tapping in and don't get left behind. The new earth is here. I will see you all in the next video.